If France ceased to exist, what would humanity be deprived of? There are some countries in the world that shape not only the geography they inhabit, but also the cultural, scientific, artistic, and historical foundations of humanity's shared heritage. France is one of the foremost among them. If France were to suddenly vanish one day, it wouldn't simply leave a blank space on the map of Europe. Humanity would fall into a profound void across countless fields, from language to fashion, art to science, philosophy to cuisine. Let us imagine together, what kind of world would it be without France? The disappearance of France would mean the erasure of a historical memory spanning thousands of years. From Gaul to the Roman Empire, the Frankish kingdom to the modern French state, France has played a central role in shaping European politics. Events such as Charlemagne's Empire, the Hundred Years' War, and the French Revolution have not only shaped France but also altered the course of world history. Without the French Revolution, concepts like liberty, equality, fraternity might never have acquired their current significance. France was the cradle of the Enlightenment. Thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu introduced ideas that resonated far beyond French borders. Concepts we now accept as universal democracy, secularism, individual rights were largely shaped by French intellectuals. Without France, these ideas may have emerged much later, or perhaps not at all. Humanity might not have escaped the darkness of the past as swiftly or as decisively. Without France, the world would have never read Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, Alexandre Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo, The Absurdism of Albert Camus, or Marcel Proust's In Search of Lost Time. France is not just a land of literature but also a global center of visual arts. Artists like Claude Monet, Paul Cézanne, Edgar Degas, and Henri Matisse led the birth of Impressionism and shaped modern art. A world that never knew the Louvre Museum, the Paris Opera House, the Palace of Versailles, or the Eiffel Tower would be an incomplete one. France has guided humanity not only through art but also through science. Antoine Lavoisier's revolutionary work in chemistry, Louis Pasteur's pioneering research in microbiology, and Marie Curie's groundbreaking studies on radioactivity are just a few examples. Without these figures, our battle against disease, our medicines, our vaccines, and even our modern understanding of medicine would be far less advanced. France's contributions to science rank among the most important advancements that have extended human lifespan and improved quality of life. When we think of fashion, Paris is the first name that comes to mind. Chanel, Dior, Louis Vuitton, Yves Saint Laurent, these are not merely brands, but embodiments of a lifestyle and a distinct aesthetic. Without the elegance and originality France brings to the fashion world, our planet would be a far duller place. Likewise, French perfumes, cuisine, and wines represent both cultural and economic treasures. Imagine a morning without a croissant, or a dinner without a bottle of Bordeaux. Isn't something missing? Spoken by millions across the globe, French is a language of diplomacy, literature, and the arts. Its disappearance would mean the loss not only of words but of the thoughts, emotions, and culture those words convey. A sentence penned by Victor Hugo in French could never carry quite the same impact in any other language. French as a diplomatic language also plays a vital role in international relations. Its absence would leave a significant gap. France is not only a European power but a global force with influence stretching from Africa to Asia, the Caribbean to the Pacific. A founding member of NATO and a cornerstone of the European Union, France's absence would fundamentally alter Europe's political balance. Its historical ties to former colonies would reshape the current political structure of Africa. Countries from Vietnam to Algeria might have had to fight their independence struggles on entirely different terms. If France were to disappear one day, dining tables around the world would grow poorer. French cuisine is one of the cornerstones of the culinary world. It is the birthplace of Michelin-starred restaurants and the land where the profession of chef has been elevated to an art form. Baguette, croissant, foie gras, ratatouille, Carmi Brilli, these are not just names of dishes, but the products of a cultural memory, centuries-old recipes, and refined mastery. Without French cuisine, global gastronomy would be far more monotonous and far less flavorful. The absence of French cuisine would also mean the loss of the values that accompany culinary culture. In France, mealtimes are moments of social connection, and cooking is seen as an art. This cultural attitude holds a unique place in human history. The now widespread fine dining tradition, the value placed on time spent at the table, and the deep link between food and aesthetics would not exist without France. Imagine a world of cinema without Jean-Luc Godard, without François Truffaut ever having existed, without a single smile from Catherine Deneuve. France is one of the most important cradles of cinematic art. Thanks to the Nouvelle Vague New Wave movement, global cinema was transformed not only technically but also in its narrative and thematic depth. The intellectual richness of French cinema, its emphasis on character analysis, and its artistic boldness have even inspired Hollywood. Without French cinema, film might have remained merely a form of entertainment, stripped of its power to provoke thought. Iconic international platforms such as the Cannes Film Festival might never have been born, limiting the globalization of cinema and restricting the reach of art to broader audiences. France is one of the countries with the highest number of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Mont Saint-Michel, the Palace of Versailles, Chartres Cathedral, the lavender fields of Provence, and the toe of the Loire Valley. These places are not just French treasures, but part of humanity's shared cultural legacy. These structures are unique not only in aesthetic terms but also in their historical and technological significance. Their disappearance would severely weaken our connection to the past. Moreover, France's approaches to urban planning, architectural design, and use of public space have influenced cities around the world. The boulevards of Paris, the historic texture of Lyon, the European spirit reflected in Strasbourg, these cities are living documents of world history. Without France, our understanding of urban development might have taken a completely different path. While France was not the birthplace of the modern Olympic Games, it has been one of their greatest contributors. Global sporting events such as the Tour de France and the Roland Garros tennis tournament, along with the World Cup victories of the French national football team, all symbolize the country's deep-rooted sports culture. France's influence in sports is not only measured by its successes but also by its organizational excellence, sportsmanship, and fan culture. Without France, the global stage of sports would be significantly less colorful and far less unified. The absence of France would also mean a major setback in the fight for social rights and equality. Feminist philosopher Simone de Beauvoir laid the theoretical foundations of the women's rights movement. France's radical approach to secularism demonstrated to the world that a clear separation between religion and state is possible. In areas such as educational equality, social security systems, and healthcare, France has pioneered the concept of the modern welfare state. Without these examples, many countries might not have progressed as far in shaping their own social policies. During World War II, the French resistance against Nazi occupation stood as one of the strongest examples of how oppressed people can organize in the name of freedom. Led by Charles de Gaulle, the resistance became not just a military force, but a source of moral and political strength. Had France not fought this battle, the course of the war could have unfolded very differently, potentially steering Europe toward a vastly different future. This, in turn, might have completely reshaped the history of global democracy. The absence of France would not merely be a void in the history books. It would represent a setback in humanity's progress. Art, science, literature, politics, gastronomy, fashion, and more. France has served as both a source of inspiration and a guiding force in all these fields. Without it, the creative spirit, courage, and imagination of humanity would be diminished. Because France is not merely a country, it is an idea, a culture, and a vision. What would disappear with France would not be limited to positive aspects alone. France's colonial past would also be erased from history. The colonial empire it established across the globe during the 19th and 20th centuries led to profound transformations, particularly in Africa and Southeast Asia. From Algeria to Vietnam, Senegal to Haiti, dozens of countries were politically, economically, and culturally reshaped under French rule. France's colonial legacy gave rise to both multilingual cultural interactions and prolonged suffering. Many nations had to fight their battles for independence directly against France. The leaders, state structures, and social movements that emerged from these struggles went on to shape contemporary global politics. Without France, these complex yet transformative historical processes would never have occurred, meaning that the identity and trajectory of many nations would be entirely different today. France is one of Europe's foremost cultural and intellectual centers. Since the Middle Ages, cities like Paris have been hubs not only for art and fashion but also for academia, philosophy, and critical thought. Prestigious institutions such as the Sorbonne University have, for centuries, welcomed thousands of students from around the world, helping spread universal ideals and ideas. French scholars have shaped scientific and philosophical frameworks not only within France but across the globe. Without France, one of Europe's intellectual wings would be broken. Universities, schools of thought, publishing houses, and literary circles would suffer a profound loss. Fields such as philosophy, sociology, and psychology would not have reached their current depth without the contributions of French thinkers. France is one of the world's most visited countries. Not just Paris, but cities like Nice, Lyon, Strasbourg, Marseille, and Bordeaux, and regions ranging from the Alps to the Mediterranean, Alsace to Provence, continue to enchant visitors. Without France, the memories, photographs, and experiences of nearly 90 million tourists each year would never exist. This would be a major blow to global tourism. Economically, it would be a significant loss. France's tourism revenue not only sustains its own economy but also has direct impacts on global aviation, hospitality, gastronomy, and cultural industries. In other words, France's absence would send economic ripples across the world. As a founding member of the European Union, France has played a visionary role not just for its own citizens but for the entire continent. Its close partnership with Germany has been crucial in Europe's post-war recovery. France has been instrumental in the formation of key policies and agreements like the Schengen Agreement, the Euro, and the Common Agricultural Policy. Without France, the EU would likely not have taken its current form. We might have seen a more fragmented, weaker, and more conflict-prone Europe. This would have directly affected the continent's stability and development. Additionally, France's absence from global organizations such as NATO, the G7, and the UN Security Council would profoundly alter the global balance of power. The 1789 Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, issued during the French Revolution, laid the foundation for the modern conception of human rights. Without this document, many principles that are now central to international law, freedom of expression, the right to property, equality, might not have developed in the way they did. This declaration also inspired the United Nations' 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Therefore, France's absence would not only affect French citizens but would also set back global progress in human rights and freedoms. The evolution of democracy and the rule of law would have been directly hindered. Without France, the world would be lacking not only in history, art, fashion, or politics, but also in emotional and aesthetic richness. The French way of life, joie de vivre, or the joy of living, inspires the world. The image of someone sitting at a cafe, sipping coffee, watching the street with appreciation, and choosing to live life slowly but intensely is a cultural counterweight to the fast, mechanized pace of modernity. France is a country that has turned life into an art form. This feeling resonates not just with the French, but with anyone whose path has crossed with France. Without this country, the world would be louder but far more soulless. If the absence of one country can create such a void, then that country is not merely a border on a map, it is a center of civilization. France is a vital pillar in humanity's intellectual and emotional evolution. It is where art, science, thought, beauty, resistance, and elegance converge. Without France, we wouldn't just lose a nation, we would lose part of what makes us human. Its erasure from the map would not mean its erasure from memory. For France is now part of global culture, and to lose it is to live in an incomplete civilization.